In the deep silence, before forests echoed with the sound of birds, before reptiles took their first steps, the land belonged to creatures stranger than imagination. Long before dinosaurs and mammals, the first conquerors of Earth's surface crawled from ancient seas. Among them was one of the most fearsome and enigmatic predators of prehistory, a scorpion of colossal size, armored in chitin, armed with claws like daggers, and capable of walking on land when most life still clung to the water. It was a hunter born from tides and tides alone, yet it learned to breathe the air. The mystery of how such a creature came to exist reveals the story of evolution's boldest experiment, the conquest of land. Hundreds of millions of years ago, during the late Silurian and early Devonian periods, Earth looked almost alien. The continents were barren and raw, blanketed with rock, sand, and the first thin mats of moss. No trees shaded the landscape, no birds sang. The air was thick with carbon dioxide, the oceans rich with life. The seas were full of trilobites, early jawless fish, and strange arthropods armored like tanks. Out of this restless ocean rose a creature that seemed to defy its own limits, a giant sea scorpion, known today by names like times Pterygotus times and times Jacalopterus asterisk. Some species reached lengths of over 8 feet, larger than a man, with jointed claws and paddle-like limbs that hinted at an amphibious existence. They were the apex predators of their world, striking from murky shallows, their compound eyes glinting through the silt. Imagine standing on a Silurian shoreline. The tide laps against smooth stone, and the air smells faintly of salt and decay. In the shallows, shadows move broad, flat, sinuous shapes gliding just below the surface. Suddenly, a ripple breaks the calm. A massive claw snaps upward, gripping a wriggling fish. The creature rises, water streaming off its armor, its long segmented tail flexing behind. Its body glistens with a thin sheen of moisture, gleaming copper in the dying light. The giant scorpion and eurypterid has surfaced. It drags itself slowly onto the wet sand, its paddle limbs pressing against the mud. For a moment it seems to hesitate, as if testing the strange solidity beneath it. Then, with surprising grace, it begins to move forward. The line between sea and land blurs. Life is changing. The existence of such creatures baffled scientists when their fossils were first uncovered in the 1800s. Early quarry workers in Scotland and Germany found enormous imprints in stone-jointed bodies, long tails, and serrated claws, unlike any known animal. Some thought they were from ancient fish, others from mythic beasts. Only later did paleontologists realize these were the remains of eurypterids, distant relatives of modern scorpions and horseshoe crabs. These predators lived during a time when vertebrates were still primitive and small, and insects had not yet taken to the air. In a sense, the giant scorpions ruled the planet, owning the shallow seas, lagoons, and tidal flats that ringed the continents. The mystery, however, lies not only in their size, but in their evolution. How did an animal designed for water begin to walk on land? To answer that, we must look closely at their anatomy and the fossil clues left behind. Eurypterids had gills, but some fossils show evidence of structures called book lungs, thin, layered sheets that allowed gas exchange in air. These may have been early adaptations for short excursions onto land, much like modern horseshoe crabs, which can survive out of water for hours. Their strong, jointed limbs could support their weight on firm surfaces. Some species even show modifications that resemble walking legs more than paddles. The transition may have been gradual, first for hunting stranded prey in tidal zones, then for escaping predators, and eventually for laying eggs or molting in the safety of dry ground. Fossil trackways give further evidence. In Scotland, researchers discovered parallel rows of footprints pressed into ancient sandstones, each set made by a large arthropod walking deliberately across damp terrain. The spacing and shape of the prints matched those of eurypterids. These tracks, over 400 million years old, mark some of the earliest evidence of any animal walking on land. They tell us that before amphibians, before reptiles, and before even the simplest insects took flight, giant sea scorpions had already begun exploring the terrestrial world. Life on land was not easy. The air was thin in oxygen, the sunlight harsh, and there was little to eat beyond algae and small detritus. Yet the rewards were great. On land, there were no predators, no competition. For creatures bold enough to venture out of the water, the world was open and new. The giant scorpions became pioneers in this great evolutionary experiment. Their legacy can still be seen in every terrestrial arthropod that followed the spiders, the centipedes, the true scorpions, even the insects that hum in the air above us. But the giant scorpions were not unstoppable. As the Devonian world changed, new challenges arose. Fish developed jaws and armor, becoming more agile and dangerous. Plants grew taller, reshaping coastlines and stabilizing soils. Rivers and swamps became more complex ecosystems, favoring smaller, faster predators. Oxygen levels increased, allowing other arthropods and early amphibians to thrive. The giant eurypterids, once the lords of shallow seas, began to fade. Their size, once an advantage, became a burden. The tides that had once sheltered them now hosted rivals they could not outmatch. Fossil evidence shows that eurypterids diversified for millions of years before disappearing entirely near the end of the Paleozoic. Some evolved into smaller, specialized hunters. Others adapted to freshwater rivers and lakes. But as the Permian extinction approached, changing climates and vanishing habitats sealed their fate. When the Great Dying struck 252 million years ago, the last of the giant sea scorpions vanished forever. The land they had once pioneered now belonged to new lineages, amphibians, reptiles, and eventually, the first true insects. The world had moved on. Still, their fossils remained silent yet eloquent. Flattened in slabs of sandstone, their exoskeletons capture a story of transition and survival. Each jointed segment tells of strength and flexibility. Each claw reveals the precision of a hunter. Their eyes, made of thousands of tiny lenses, are still visible under magnification, staring through time. In some cases, the impressions of their delicate gill plates can be seen, showing just how close they came to breathing air. For paleontologists, every discovery is a message from deep time, a reminder that life's greatest transformations are often the most fragile. There is a certain poetry in imagining those first steps onto land. The scorpion, glistening from the tide, presses its weight forward. Its legs sink slightly into the sand, leaving perfect impressions. The waves hiss and retreat. The creature pauses, sensing air across its armor, the faint pull of a new world. It moves again, slow but steady, following an instinct older than reason. Behind it, the tide closes the tracks. Ahead, the land waits. That moment, repeated countless times across ages and species, would reshape the planet forever. It is the moment life learned to walk. In the fossil record, the story of the giant scorpion is also the story of adaptation, the balance between form and function, risk and reward. To leave water is to gamble survival against possibility. For the eurypterids, it was both a triumph and a test. They succeeded for a time, ruling both sea and shore. But evolution is never static. What thrives in one age perishes in another. Their extinction reminds us that dominance is temporary, but innovation is eternal. The book lungs of those first walkers would evolve into the breathing systems of insects and arachnids. Their segmented armor would become lighter and more flexible. Their predatory instincts would pass into countless descendants. The giant scorpion is gone, but its essence remains in every spiderweb, every beetle's crawl, every creature that breathes air through a trachea. When scientists study these fossils today, they use advanced imaging to uncover details invisible to the naked eye. Scanning electron microscopes reveal microstructures in the exoskeleton. Chemical analysis identifies the minerals that replace the original chitin. Even the color patterns can sometimes be reconstructed from fossilized pigments. These tools turn stone into story, restoring life to creatures unseen for hundreds of millions of years. It's not just about what they looked like, but what they tell us about Earth itself. How climates shifted, oceans receded, and ecosystems evolved. The world that birthed the giant scorpion was both hostile and creative. Volcanic islands dotted shallow seas, the atmosphere shimmered with carbon-rich haze. Lightning flashed over endless storms, feeding primitive soils with nitrogen. The first vascular plants crept across rocks, their roots splitting stone into dust. In that dust, the first soils formed. On those soils, the first tracks appeared. The giant scorpion's journey from sea to land mirrors Earth's own awakening, from a planet of water to a planet of living continents. Its disappearance, too, tells a lesson. Evolution's bold experiments often end in silence. The creatures that bridge worlds rarely survive long in either. But without them, no new paths would open. The mystery of the giant scorpion is not simply that it existed, but that it dared. It dared to crawl where no animal had crawled before, to test the air and find it survivable. That single act, repeated by countless others across millennia, built the biosphere we inhabit today. To stand before a eurypterid fossil in a museum is to look at both the alien and the familiar. The shape is strange, but the story is ours. Like us, it was driven by curiosity, necessity, and adaptation. It faced change and met it with evolution. Its world ended, but its experiment endured. The claws that once gripped the sand belong to our history now. We walk where it once crawled. Millions of years after its extinction, the giant scorpion remains a symbol of life's relentless progression. Every era births its titans and loses them. The oceans gave rise to monsters that touched the land. The land later gave rise to creatures that reached for the sky. Evolution is a continuum of courage, and the eurypterids were among its first pioneers. Their fossils remind us that every footprint, every breath, every heartbeat carries the memory of those who came before creatures that faced the unknown and moved forward anyway. Somewhere in the sandstone of an ancient shoreline, a set of tracks still lies hidden, each print pressed into the mud by a creature both alien and familiar, a bridge between two worlds. When those tracks are found, they will tell the same story written in every fossil, every bone, every grain of sand that has ever held the imprint of life, that survival is not about strength or size alone. It is about change, about daring to step into what comes next. And that is the mystery of the giant scorpion that walked on land, not a monster from myth, but a pioneer of possibility, a creature whose silent steps marked the beginning of everything that would follow.